Hello, YouTube, and happy Halloween. My name is Alan, and it's that time once again. Let's talk metal. With Halloween 2023 rapidly approaching, figured it was time to do something a little Halloween themed for this week's episode, which will be coming out on Halloween Day if I stick to my normal Tuesday morning schedule. So, for this topic, I thought it might be fun to do a little trick or treating. So, the idea here is I'm going to show a few albums that were tricks. I got them thinking they would be pretty good, kind of cool. They had some potential, showed some promise, and they turned out to, well, trick me. They were kind of duds, never got into them. They have some serious problems. Those are the tricks. And then I'm also going to show a few albums that turned out to be real treats. These might have been blind buys, things that I just kind of checked out on a whim that I didn't really have any expectation for at all, and they ended up being incredibly good. So I'm going to do, I believe, 3 tricks and 3 treats. We'll alternate back and forth because, of course, you have to trick or treat. So without further ado, let's do our first trick. For this one, I have chosen Budgie's second album, Squawk. I like the Budgie self-titled album a lot. It's a very fun listen, has a great sound, very bottom heavy, tons of cool tracks on it. I like their kind of, quirkiness on the shorter, quiet numbers that then lead into some of the big, crushing ones. I like the couple of albums that come after this. You've got In for the Kill and Never Turn Your Back on a Friend. Both have lots of quality tracks on them. And this one's just kind of sandwiched there in the middle. Figured like, okay, I like albums 1, 3, and 4. Surely album number 2 is also pretty good. Eh, it's just never really done much for me. I go back and keep replaying it from time to time, thinking there has to be something really solid on here. And well, it's not a stinker of an album, and there's a couple of songs that are all right. It just feels like a real fine example of the sophomore slump, where they had a lot of good songs and used them all on the first album, and were probably rushed to put this one together, and the material just doesn't measure up. It doesn't help, the production's nothing like the first album. It doesn't have that real, bottom heavy, kind of, proto metal sound to it. It just misses that, early 70s kind of primal thud. And, it just isn't, as sharp and as catchy as the 2 albums that come after it either. So, yeah, it's just kind of feels very plain. It sounds kind of nondescript. So, yeah, maybe one day it'll click with me. But for now, Budgie's Guac, that one goes in the trick pile. Boo. All right, for our first treat. This is an album that, credit where credit's due, my sister was into long before I was. And I remember when she got it, I looked at it and thought, there is no way that could possibly be good. I would never like that. But then later on, I heard her playing it. It was just like, what's that? And she's like, it's this album. It's like, oh, really? I'm talking about Cinderella's debut, Night Songs. You're serious headbangers, and especially those who were not kids during the 1980s. Everything about this looks hideous. The name Cinderella sounds all wrong for a metal band. You've got, the pink color scheme, not the most heaviest of metaliest colors there. They've got the big hair and the bad glam trash, sleaze looking clothes. Everything here looks wrong until you play it and you realize that, yeah, Cinderella was one of those bands, kind of like Rat and Dokken and some others, that were basically hard rock bands, kind of shoehorned into the glam category because that's what was popular at the time. This may seem silly to look at today, but this was the fashion of the time. Of course, they were wearing it. Everybody was wearing it. It's like looking at albums from the early 70s and criticizing the band members for wearing bell bottoms. That's all there was to wear. You couldn't buy pants that weren't bell bottoms for some years there. And of course, once the album gets going, it's a real rocker. Tom Kiefer's, got that, very kind of, very unique voice. It's not necessarily gravelly, but, it's got, kind of a raw sound to it. But yeah, these are just, really solid, good, hard rocking tunes. The album's pretty solid start to finish. It's one of my favorites from that era. So yeah, it went from a ew, why are you buying that, sis, to a can I make a cassette copy of that? That's actually really good. And it's, of course, now on the shelf. This is actually her copy. She eventually kind of grew out of the 80s, hair stuff. And so, yeah, I salvaged this one before she took it off to the used record store. So that will be our first treat. Night Songs, Cinderella. All right, back to another trick. This was a band I'd heard a lot about over the years and usually talked about pretty positively, and I just never really came across their stuff. And a few years ago, this came, I'm pretty sure, from Marty in a VCLT box. He had thrown it. It's like, oh, cool. There's an album by Status Quo. Always wanted to hear Status Quo. Didn't know anything about the album, but I checked, looked it up, a few reviews and everything, and folks were like, oh yeah, this is the Status Quo album to get. I don't even remember what it's called, which tells you where this is going. But yeah, folks are like, this is the heaviest album. This is kind of their most crushing. I'm like, perfect. Yeah, this is going to be the best one to check out by them. Put it on and play it. This is a boogie album more than anything else, and when you start reading past the most fanboyish reviews, Status Quo is kind of a boogie band. I can handle boogie in small doses here and there, and I can handle it, especially if it's a little more up-tempo, say the way Vardis tended to do it on some of their early material. But when you have a whole lot of it, say an album's worth, most of it's not really going at a particularly fast tempo, I know, no, that's just not something that I'm interested in or enjoy much. So yeah, this went from, one of those kind of, mythical 70s bands shrouded in mystery that everyone talks up, and, here's the album and the chance to check it out. And yeah, won't be checking this one out again. Still, big thank you to Marty for including it in the VCLT box. You got to check these things out sooner or later. Sometimes they're tricks, sometimes they're treats. Yeah, this one did, however, end up in the trick pile. So yeah, big no to Status Quo. Let's go with our next treat. This one has an extremely plain cover. It is by a band called Impeccable. Not a great name to start with, and it's simply called Live on the Rocks. If you look way down here in the bottom corner, there's this ridiculously small cartoon drawing of, like a 70s long hair holding up a sign that says disco sucks. And he has giant feet for reasons. The back of the cover is not a whole lot better than the front. You have song titles. You do have band members, and a little bit of info there at the bottom, and that's it. It's very understandable why this album never made any waves, because just looking at this in a record store, what would prompt you to buy this unless you knew the band and had maybe seen them live and enjoyed them? I mean, there's nothing here that says buy me, which is a real shame, because this is an absolutely sizzling piece of 70s hard rock done right for a live recording, which was done live, I believe, in Lubbock, Texas. If not Lubbock, yep, it was Lubbock. Yeah, great vocals, a little bit higher maybe in the Geddy Lee range, but Geddy Lee's voice has always irritated me. I'm in that camp where his voice irritates me. So this is like, the non-irritating Geddy Lee. Real hotshot guitar heroics all over the place, just really amazingly performed songs. Fantastic stuff. And for just, a obviously small budget live recording from the 70s, it has terrific sound. Whoever's working the soundboard on this really knew what they were doing. Some fantastic tracks on here. Personal favorites, let's see, we've got Call of the Wild, Traces of Time, and Seashore. Seashore is one of those songs I've probably played it over 100 times. I can't get enough of it. Amazing song, great guitar solos, great chorus, total earworm, love it to death. And it's just this very nondescript, plain white album that yeah, you really wouldn't give a second look to. Why did I check this out? The reason was the band, before being called Impeccable, were known as Axe, which not the most original name either, but they made it a very, very rare 7-inch single. And somebody had recorded the 7-inch single for me at some point. I loved it to death. And when I found out there was a connection with Impeccable, I was like, okay, I'll check out the Impeccable album sometime. And yeah, was just absolutely amazed at how good it was. So yeah, right here. Not all treats come in fancy, colorful wrappers. Some of them come in a very plain wrapper with nothing but the name on it, and it still is an absolute treat. All right, on to our third and final trick of the night. And this one actually is kind of a trick. I have ranted about this once or twice in the past, but it's very appropriate for the subject here this evening. This is Witchcraft's black metal album. This was this Swedish band that's always gets compared to vintage Pentagram from the 70s, which to me has never really sounded like Pentagram's 70s material. I'm not really sure why people make that comparison. Nevertheless, they made some albums that aren't bad. I believe they had one called, The Alchemist, a couple of others that not bad albums. They never blew me away. But, I could play them several times, go back to them on rare occasion and enjoy them as, that sort of, 70s throwback style. Yeah, they're functional in that way. A little better than average, maybe. We'll give them like C plus, B minus kind of, you're a little above average, not bad. I wouldn't buy them for $16.99 the day they came out. I'd certainly pick them up for, $6-7 when I see them in the used bin, which is what I did with this one. It was in a used bin for like $6 or $7. I'm like, don't know that one. Let's see. It's, Nuclear Blast, few songs came out after the others. For some reason, I either didn't have my phone with me or I didn't have time to, pull up any information about it at the time. And I was like, I've already got a few other CDs here. Sure, it's only a few more bucks. We'll add it to the stack. Something in the back of my mind was kind of telling me, like, this may not quite work out on this one. Because, again, this band doesn't exactly light my world on fire. But I went ahead and took a chance on it. I wish I had those $6 back. For those who are familiar with this, first off, right away, calling it black metal is extremely misleading. And this is one of the things that had kind of, set off my spider senses in the record store. Witchcraft was never a black metal band, not even close to it, not by any definition of black metal. So it was very strange that the album was called that. You put this on, and what you actually get to hear is something like 24 minutes of mostly just acoustic. And by acoustic, I mean like a guy strumming a guitar and singing quietly, kind of acoustic. My running joke for this with people has been that, the album's about 24 minutes long, and I think they spent all of about 26 minutes recording it. There's nothing to this. This is a complete and utter waste of time. I'm amazed that they had the gall to record it and try to sell it to people. I am dumbfounded that Nuclear Blast actually agreed to release it when given the tape. It makes no sense why this product existed. It's one of those things. It's so bad and so misleading. It actually makes me physically angry to talk about. So we're not going to talk about it anymore. I don't know what I want to do with this. I'll probably take it to the used store sometime and see if I can get a couple of bucks, and then some other poor sap will be subjected to it. I'm not putting it into a VCLT box because that would just be like cruel and unusual punishment for whoever received it. One of the biggest tricks I've come across in recent years. Do not buy Witchcraft's black metal. All right, but hey, we're going to end on a high note because we've got one last treat. And this is one when you look at the cover, once again, you think people had to just run away screaming. The cover art is like, what in God's name were you thinking? Why would anybody buy this album based on this cover? I don't think they would. The album in question, Whiplash, Ticket to Mayhem, their second album. Now again, Power and Pain gets a lot of the hype and praise, and it's a great album. I'm not putting it down at all. This has always been my favorite out of the Whiplash catalog, however. But I mean, this cover, I mean, it looks like it's put together by somebody who got kicked off the set of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood for lack of imagination. You know, holding the ticket. I swear these must be like little Fisher Price Weeble Wobble people or something. Ticket to Mayhem. Where's the mayhem? We see like, you know, two people with like, you know, 1960s haircuts going into an amusement park, and there's, you know, I guess the sky is green. Is that the mayhem part? There was, you know, a skeleton there with a silly hat. I just, who made this? Why did they make it? Why did they propose it to be the cover of a thrash metal album? Why did the band agree to use it? Why did the record label agree to use it? There are so many questions about this. I can't tell you why I bought this. Looking at it, it's got a $1 price tag on it. So yes, I paid $1 for this, apparently. I don't remember when I got it. I have a feeling I bought it at a record show back in the 90s. There was a couple of vendors back then that would come to record shows in the Carolinas and Virginia. And they would always have like, you know, a couple of boxes of very random metal LPs. Most of it was pretty readily accessible stuff. Like the perfect example when I think about that vendor is Lizzie Borden. They would always have 2 or 3 Lizzie Borden albums in the box. A lot of that kind of stuff. Not necessarily bad, but just stuff that you could find anywhere back then. And I have a feeling that price sticker and that price tag makes me think it came out of one of their boxes. I might be wrong, and I picked it up someplace else that I'm not remembering. It's been, I've had it since back in the 90s, so it's been a long time. I can't remember where every record came from. Anyway, I bought it because it was super cheap, and probably I'm going to give myself some credit here, which may or may not be deserved. Probably bought it in part because I noticed it was on, you know, Roadrunner. And I was like, okay, for $1, I'll give $1 for a Roadrunner record. And of course, you end up getting an amazingly good thrash album. I know some folks not nuts about the guitar tone. It's not going to win any awards in the annals of thrash metal history, but still, incredible set of songs. The Burning of Atlanta is one of my all-time favorite thrashers. Great song, crazy speed, sick lyrics. Love it to death. And yeah, you look at this and you think it was recorded by, you know, a bunch of guys that went to your high school and they just, you know, threw something together for fun. But no, it's a legit, you know, killer slab of thrash. So amazing treat. Sometimes your treats come in really, really weird packaging that makes you think that's not a piece of candy I want. But you give it a try and realize that, yep, I'm all in on that one. All right, that is going to do it for this episode. We've seen 3 tricks and 3 treats. So now let's go trick-or-treating in the comments down below. What are some of your big trick or treat albums? What are some that you bought having big high hopes for and it just completely was a bust? Or what are some of the things you maybe did a blind buy and it worked out fantastic? Or you bought it even though it looked kind of fishy and it turned out to be an absolutely pounder of a metal album. Leave a comment down below and leave some of your favorite trick-or-treat stories so other folks can enjoy them as well. All right, it's going to be a wrap. Everybody have fun out there trick-or-treating tonight. Make sure you check your candy before you bite into it. And until next time, keep banging your head.